I feel like I'm fucking going through menopause. Hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. Can we go through this?
Yeah. Why did they make the black? It's because they felt like a slave at the time to this rich and powerful white slave.
Tell me a little bit about what's going on. How you feeling, and what's
How are we feeling?
Yeah.
Healthcare is very interesting these days. We all got into healthcare because we care about people.
Right.
We're in an amazing country that has universal healthcare, which is so fantastic. We're so blessed to be Canadian.
Okay. Oh my god. I just don't understand what's happening to my insides. I might have to shit again. I'm so sad. I'm so sad. I don't want to go. Damn it! Yum. Yum. It's a teeny tiny tractor.
It's a what?
It's a teeny tiny tractor.
Teeny tiny tractor. Oh shit. Yeah.
It's a little tractor.
Bulldozer thing.
Yeah. That's so cool. Can you guys just like do the things that I need you to do?
That's all, folks.
Arctic cat. That's ugly. Hmm? What?
This is an extra large. They have an XX large. I thought this was the smallest. Some za, bro. I wanna eat the very best that no one ever was. Catch them is my real test. The train that is the cause. I've traveled across the land, searching far and wide. Spoken one to understand the power that's inside.
Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all.
So true.
I carry to fullest through. You teach me and I'll teach you. Pokemon,
Gotta catch 'em all.
gotta catch 'em all. Pokemon. Mm. Mm. Oh, I thought you were totally doing. Free, Frigo Noir Sub-Zero.
I'm blind.
What?
I didn't pull out my soul. Everything's fuzzy.
Oh no.
That was so fun.
Mm.
I have an upgrader right there. Probably play it.
Just me sending you stuff, by the way. Oh. I saw a pedal boat. And I was like, wonder if we could get a pedal boat. And then my brain started turning. And then I was like, oh God. Oh God. That would be so bad.
We used to have one. We used to go upstream with it.
The seaweed. And like, and basically any foreign object. Like, you're fucked. Like, just get stuck in the fucking stupid spinner. Like, and there's just stuff everywhere. So, if you were at the falls and you just like literally pushed it into the falls, maybe that's really the only spot you could put it. Like,
I mean, they used to go down like the stream with it, but it's a lot of walking. Lots of walking. Because you can't just like pedal through shallow rocks because it's only in the front or in the back or whatever. So it's like
interesting.
you wanna
An
watch
ammo filler. The machine to fill ammunition.
ammunition.
lead powder. It could fill bullets. Hmm. Aww.
You know what? I caught you riding around in your mom's ride.
Chenille? Caterpillar? Hmm.
Marge! Marge! Want to shut this off for now? Yeah. Ugh. Marge!
What the hell?
I don't know.
No, wait.
What? Marge! God damn it, I'm gonna have that in my head now forever. Tequila. Sunrise at the bloodshot eyes on my mind. Halftime flies. So what? So good morning, nigga. OMG, there's a moose and a deer and there's a
It
deer
looks just
elk.
like the one that we saw the other day. At that great place.
Oh, yeah.
In some square.
This supposed to be. I do not remember. Hey, they gave me a table. Yay. I don't know what it is with kids in the table, with just the imagination of like, why the fuck is there a table there, and not figuring out it's to keep the box up. Unless I'm a complete idiot. It took me that long to figure out that the table was for the box. I never knew what the table was for.
Well, now you figured it out, smart guy.
Yeah.
If you take a cookie, I will be forced to add 1 full day to your sentence.
You think a full day scares the captain?
Gary, I've explained this to you every day for the past 5 years. You are not the captain. You are a prisoner aboard this ship.
It's just like
No,
everyday life.
they're just so good.
And the robot, the one that thing that doesn't make sense, gets the
Day
cookies.
has been added to your sentence.
Yeah.
What? No
Yeah.
way.
I think this is the one I want to watch. Was this the one I was watching?
Cool. Wait, what?
Okay, I missed all this. I
I don't get it. There's no way that's $800.
What? The canoe?
It's a hunting canoe. It's got like the thing for the fish. It's like a little bucket. It's built into the boat. You fill it with water. Look, there's a spot for your knife. But it has a motor, but oh,
It has to be an electric motor, not a.
it is. Well, it is.
Huh?
Original bench, electric motor, stand-in rod doors.
He's not from where I come from. Once he's Lord of the Two Lands, we'll hear it plenty.
Just don't use the motor.
Get it. I'll take the sword.
That's in Blainville. For $800 though. That's crazy.
Your faith. Something. No, I suppose not. What can you tell me about this wizard commonplace? Be careful, my friend. Keep your voice down. Cops the only wizard in these parts who still holds on to his powers. He's not exactly popular around here. He lives in a fortress outside of town. I'd keep clear if I were you.
That's the set I want.
I never thought I'd find you here. Call me
cookie?
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought that you might like to stay and help a while. I'm sure Tara would like that too. You don't have to give me
Oh,
an answer.
Tara's a fucking whore.
I hope you'll think about it.
Tara's a whore? Fucking slut. Slutty slut. Oh no, I gotta watch out what I say now.
Come, Tara.
I can't just
Tara?
yell slut now.
Yeah, you can.
No.
Why the fuck not?
I'll get tasered. Goddamn white people oppressing me.
Yeah, but then fucking you'd be in the hospital and I'd be in the police station because if a cop tasered you wrongfully, I'd have to punch a cop.
As long as they don't taser me in the fucking nuts or in the titty or in the face.
It was really fucking big.
Yeah.
It's like the size, like it was like half the size of my computer. It was fucking like a giant puck. It was yellow. Had the fucking red laser and everything. Both of them are just like fucking black ops into my apartment. I'm just like, this is not fucking necessary. Like, this is fucking retarded. And the guy was like, yeah, I know. I was like, no, but like, it's not in your fucking place that you live. So why, like, you just don't say anything. Just play the fucking bad cop fucking game bullshit with me then. Like, I'm like, why don't you just go fucking ask the person who fucking called? Like, did you hear two voices? No? Like, what was the movie? Mind your fucking business. Like,
For real.
fucking takes like 6 months to weed out the fucking jackass. Remember that girl in fucking next door there, the French girl? And like, I think it was because I was sitting outside on like the step one day, like by myself smoking, watching videos, and her and her friends were all fucking drunk and came and stood literally at the stairs. Like at the top of the stairs, right where the fucking little fucking brick part is. I was like, why are you standing right there? Being like obnoxious and drunk. Like, go somewhere else. Like, and I just told them to go the fuck away. Like, go somewhere else. Like, you're fucking loud and drunk and obnoxious. I'm like just sitting here by myself, and you guys are trying to be like, oh, I'm super tough. Like, oh, what are you doing, little weird girl? Like, I'm like, fuck you. What the fucking little kid out of high school? You're a bully. Get the fuck out of here. Like, but that's the girl. I think that's who was throwing the dog shit in the back of your truck. Remember you kept finding bags of dog shit in your back of your truck? I think it was that girl.
Next door?
Yeah, well, like, she eventually, remember when we got cockroach, or Ian told us there was, like, cockroaches next door? Yeah, it was her. After, like, I think she eventually probably got kicked out. It was her and, like, 2 other girls, I think. The lesbian girl.
I'm surprised we never got anything. There has to be something, but we're just not seeing it.
No, I know there's a mouse. He is, where the bathroom, under the sink, there's a hole in the cupboard where that pipe is, and I've heard him scratching on that thing. The thing that I broke. To get to the pipes. What do you call it? The heated pipes? Because, like, at one point, I was just like, you have to be sitting at a weird time at night in, like, dead silence. And, like, you'll hear him, like, scratching a little bit. You don't even know.
I failed my father and I failed myself.
Yes, you did. You're a failure.
Failure.
It's as if there was some other person
No.
deep inside me.
Oh, they're talking now?
So deep.
You were right, Tara, when you told me I don't belong here.
I didn't know.
Oh my god, is it a fucking bear
You
trap?
were right. If I don't leave soon, he will come here again. is pestilentious. And yet sure they are.
The Lord has been seen to many who are dumb. My
No,
spies have confirmed the
oh,
silence. Yes, my people. Let's go, man.
okay, Jack. That will be.
Not much.
Come on. Oh,
A greeting from the upper edge.
I don't want to get up. What was the other thing that was stuck in my head?
Taru, Aaron, supper's ready. Where's Aaron?
Nigga. Why do you eat so
I
much
thought you
chicken?
did. Maybe he's just resting. Taru, go see if he's up there.
It's the fucking MSN Messenger days. Those fucking little clips,
Yeah.
sound clips.
That's odd.
That was one of them.
Where on earth did he go? I'll look outside.
But a little bitch. You gonna cry?
People away. She's like, oh.
Yeah,
you
bitch,
go
get used
away.
to it.
Oh yeah, fuck, can't stand these. I'm here if you need to talk. You didn't even make it that far. She could probably like sprint there in like 2 seconds and let that be it.
And like, that'd be it.
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't matter which way I choose.
Just goes back to the town.
It's here.
What? Oh, really?
Someone's here. I hope that's Aaron. Aaron? That's strange. Oh, what are you doing? You! What do you want?
If the wizard's gone, then you'll have to do since I can't return empty-handed.
What do you mean? Run, Teru, run!
That's a surprise. Didn't know we'd be meeting again this soon, princess.
Leave her alone, she's done nothing to you!
So, little princess, just tell me, where can I find that prince again? Watch those teeth of yours. I need you to deliver a little message for me. Tell this to the wizard. If he wants to see his woman again, you can find her at Lord Cobb's castle. Take her away.
He never wants his woman again.
Are you alright? Tara! Tara! Let her out of there!
You stay right where you are till the wizard gets back. Behave, little princess. Lord Cobb's waiting. Let's go. Yeah!
Oh my god, why did you do that?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid that he will be coming with me.
Be gone.
Ooh. Okay, well, it's definitely not this one. Where?
A little bit of you are to magic myself. And I know where your mother from. You made a very wise decision to break free of that man.
What man?
It's very wrong. That is to say, the Archmage. Here, drink this and it will soothe you. What's wrong? Trust me.
Actually, it was poison. You're stupid.
Come on.
I still first. The Archmage is more dangerous than you can imagine. When I needed it, he was there.
Oh.
Ask yourself what it is you seek. Eternal life is the only thing he craves. Eternal life.
And he needs your supple body to do it.
Mage stands
Supple youth.
is beyond his grasp. Yeah, that is what
Let's see. Oh.
Lebanon. Lebanon.
Well, shit.
In you go. Make yourself comfortable. Your wizard will be joining you down there soon enough.
This reminds me of tunes. So many memories.
You know, he's a little fireball.
Are you making the same mistake again? At ease.
Okay.
Sign of the lizard? No, not yet, sir.
Where is he? It's here. All right, take your position.
They're really like all he's in charge of is 2 men.
No, God damn it! Continue.
It's like you really only have like 2, 3 little dudes that follow you around and like
Show yourself to me.
do all these things.
At least since I left you at the border of the land of death, copper.
They say you're the Archmage now. Congratulations.
I came on. Now release Tanar.
You disappoint me, Sparrowhawk. The great Archmage in all his glorious power smitten by a woman.
You know that you used her to lure me here. What is it you want?
What do you think I want? I haven't forgotten what you did to me. How you dragged me to the gates of the dry land.
Have you forgotten the reason why? You twisted the Pelnish law to mock and make sport of the spirits of the living as well as the dead. Isn't that enough for you to repent?
You taught me an important lesson on the border of the dry land. Now I know I can never accept death. So I gathered up every book on ancient lore I could find. I regret to say some of their owners were not cooperative.
And what are you plotting now? Come.
I have succeeded, Sparrowhawk.
Oh, GG. You fatty.
You taught me an important lesson.
You taught me the pointless lesson.
Now I know I can never accept death.
I can never
So
accept
I gathered up
anything
every book on
anymore.
ancient lore I could find. I regret to say some of their owners were not cooperative.
I don't know why.
I have succeeded, Sparrowhawk.
I do say ridiculous things. And that's what makes me so immature, and that's why you like me, because I'm immature in a little way.
Sometimes.
I shall not believe.
Opening the
fun,
door
though.
is forbidden. Have you finally gone mad? Those with power better learn to wield it with wisdom, Cobb. Would you destroy the balance that sustains the world?
But I'm emo.
Balance was gone long ago. You would know that far better than anyone else. It was destroyed by man.
And my mother never loved me.
Its desire.
Daddy wasn't there.
I have to go in my
My
car.
underwear always has shit stains.
I don't want to go to the car.
Come.
What?
Without the cycle of death
far.
and rebirth, there can be no life for anyone.
Someone else here who wants to see.
Thought you were getting it to put the pizza away.
No.
Okay.
What are you doing here?
This man will deprive you of eternal life.
Eternal.
Aaron, did you reveal your true name to him? I'm going to live!
Tired of living in fear.
Aaron, life without death is not life. Don't you see? Refuse death and you refuse life as well. Liar!
It's fine, Jack.
Listen to me, Aaron. No man nor any living thing in this world preserves their life forever. But only to men is it given to know that we must die, and that is a precious gift. This life that is both our torment and our treasure was never meant to endure for eternity. Life is a wave on the sea. Would you force the sea to grow still to save one wave? To save yourself? Aaron.
You thought you made a fool of me, didn't you, wizard? There's more than one entrance to this castle.
Why am I growing weaker? Coming here was another of your blunders, Sparrowhawk. Your powers are useless in this place. Now then, lock him in the dungeon alongside his woman. I will finish them tomorrow. After a taste of pain.
See what getting into trouble gets you? You're in a dungeon. A sexy dungeon. It's got mold and everything everywhere. Look at it, it's so damp. It's like, what's his name? The creepy, like, underwater seaweed monster guy.
Washing down. Sorry.
Are you alright?
I'll be back for you tomorrow. Say your goodbyes while you still have time.
Oh no. Fuck, I hate this.
I'm sorry to know. I just keep getting into trouble.
Stop talking nonsense.
And she didn't stay in the barn. Now she's gonna go left. Or are you gonna turn right, go down the dead end? Oh no, it's it.
Aaron, wait!
Aaron!
Aaron! Cobb's men came to the farm and took Tenor away. Aaron! Your sword! Sparrowhawk told me to give it to you.
You want me to follow you?
All right then.
Tenor is being held a prisoner inside that castle. Sparrowhawk, too.
Sparrowhawk. This belongs to you, right? Sparrowhawk said you would need it. You've got to hurry. They really need your help.
I cannot go any further than this. You must go on alone. Take the sword with you and bring it to me. I know you can do it.
What do you mean? You're with me right now.
You see only a part of me. I'm being held by a wizard against my will.
Jesus Christ.
What are you? Stay away. Get back now. Stay back.
Aaron's heart was burdened with fear, and that fear filled his heart with desperation and darkness.
Fear of what?
In the end, the darkness stole his body and ran away with it. But something was left behind. What you see? Darkness cannot exist without light. Now the light that was left behind wanders alone, like a shadow.
Shadow.
What you
A
see
light like a shadow.
is a shadow that is searching for its
Mm.
body.
It's a body. It's a shadow. But it's like light because you need shadow. I mean, you need light to make a shadow. It wanders alone, looking for its body. Because it's a light, but it makes a shadow.
My teeth hurt.
Yeah.
I'm giving you
The
something
fuck?
precious.
Oh
I
god.
give you my true name, Lebanon. Lebanon.
Fire.
Lebanon.
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 Lebanon. Lebanon. Goddamn French people. I fucking hate them.
What the camion
All
fiber?
French people.
5 foot by 7 foot.
They don't belong here anyways.
No way. Yours is 8 feet, right?
Ooh, what?
Your cab? It's like 8 by 10?
Yes.
I think yours like 8.5 or something like stupid. Like, because it has to be a full one.
I think it's 8 feet.
Oh.
So it's really like to close the door, it's like under 8 feet.
Oh, I thought she just said a 10.
He should be ashamed to call himself
Good
the
for you.
Archon.
Oh, look at that. 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Well spoken.
Yay, free dirt.
So there is like 8 guys, but that's including the captain.
He's a lucky one, there, boy. Only somebody like Cobb would be sneaky enough to steal the wizard's apprentice.
So there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of use for him.
None at all. When we're through with the wizard, we're just going to have to sell him into slavery again. All right, go down and get Sparrowhawk and his woman. afraid the great Archmage's time has finally run out.
They're really going to kill them.
Yay.
Death to America!
Death, 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 death. Ugh. For once, I'll boost the Al Qaeda and we'll fight for a free, beating women nation. No, this is gross. Oh, fuck, this is retarded. I can't even say that. I feel gross saying that. That's so gross.
Alright, let's try to figure this out.
You wanna try to figure out, homegirl? That's awesome. 1982.
What if I just be like, somebody stole my car and then I found it? So these tickets are not my tickets. One of them is. One of them because the cop spoke to me, so that's a witness.
Yeah,
But every other one, fucking, that was a thief that stole my car without my knowing. I'm just like, I was in my fucking trap!
Did they kidnap you too?
Well,
Here, I think this belongs to you.
I think first.
That's how I was Sparrowhawk.
Stole the car,
They
and
said
then
they're going
fucking
to kill
get
them.
that car, and then
So
register
please,
that car, and then
let
switch
them
the car, and
know.
then fucking switch back cars, and then switch back cars again! Fucking, it's retarded! Dude, what's public transit fee?
They're both
Why do I have to
going
pay for
die if
public
you don't
transit
do
fees?
something.
That's why I got the car!
Don't you care? I said they're both going to die.
Fucking hate it here. Why do we live here? This place sucks balls.
You
Just
wanted
like-
to live here.
Nah, just Quebec in general. Quebec fucking blows so hard.
Well, that's where my job is.
Yeah, but everyone's just so fucking retarded.
You know,
Like, they
what's
just
most
are like,
important.
this is a bill. For what? It's just a bill. Everybody pays it. Why?
No, life is precious because we know we're going to
Seriously
die.
though, have you ever looked at
Is
your
it what
fucking
you feel
registration
most
thing?
You're afraid of being
What?
alive.
What are you talking
You
about?
want to live forever. Then you say nothing matters. But you're afraid
Public
to live.
transit includes tax imposed by Ville de Montreal.
That's in your ticket?
No, this is everybody pays this for with SAAQ. So like when you register your car,
10 are giving me my life. That's
What
why
is
I have
it?
to live, so that I can give life to someone else.
one of them explained what it was. Your mechanical inspection, registration fee, public transit fee, insurance premium, tax on insurance, but I don't even have insurance. What was the other thing?
You told me yourself.
Yeah, but that's fucking public transit includes tax imposed by Ville de Montreal. Like, what the fuck is that? See balance on financial summary.
The fuck is that? Yeah, I know.
I don't get it.
This is loud. I lost.
This is all you.
I
I'm
know.
not even to blame for this one.
I had the remote in front of me and you stole it.
Come on, Terry.
You stole it. I literally just had it in my hands.
F your
And then you
child.
came and brought all this stuff here, and then you were like,
Hey, really? Oh,
It's right here.
you're such a bitch. He was complain.
That's all a part of my plan. Look at me now.
I like that your dad immediately caught on to my wavelength where I was like, I don't know why I listen to Cam Rocks. He's like, yeah, so that you get stuck and he can fish. I was like, see? I fucking knew it!
You get yourself stuck.
Oh
yeah, you gotta stop putting food down.
Oh, I fucked up. Is it still going? That's bitchy. Not picking the nose out of his dress again. This is how you your neighbor. Oh dear. Oh, so gross. Good enough. Oh. Oh. You know what? You do what you want. You want to think you're clever? All right. Come on in, Mama. Come on. Inside. Let's go. Come on. Mama. Psst. Come on, Mama. Psst. All right, fine. Come in. Oh. Yeah. Go. Go up. bugging the shit out of me. Grrr.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Crystal?
Indeed, we do. It is a gigantic week in Washington with tons of potential ramifications, not only political, but more importantly, just substantively for you and your life. But some other stories we want to get to as well. There was a tearful display from one Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the floor of the House. We will explain as much as we can figure out what exactly was going on there. New revelations. This is the first confirmed instance of a Fed informant actually involved in the January 6th riot, insurrection, whatever you want to call it. So we'll get to that. Bombshell revelations involving Julian Assange, the lengths that the CIA were willing to go to, up to and including kidnapping and murdering him. Also some reporting there about friend of the show, Glenn Greenwald, and how they were trying to target and go after him as well for the crime of being a journalist. New Arizona audit-ish results show that actually Biden won by even more than what the original tally said, so that's kind of interesting. We've got Dylan Radigan on. We've been following closely, as you guys know, what's going on in China, what's going on with Evergrande, so we're really excited to get him in the show to talk to him. He was, of course, incredibly prescient about the housing crisis and really had the bank's number and saw exactly what was going on there, so excited to talk to him. We wanted to start with just what is going on here in Washington this gigantic week. As we've been telling you guys, bunch of issues coming to a head. You've got a government shutdown looming end of this week. You've got debt ceiling set to be breached middle of next month, so in just a couple of weeks here. And of course, the big things that we're focused on, you have these two pillars of the Biden agenda, the infrastructure package, this bipartisan infrastructure package, and the reconciliation bill. Now, today originally had been the deadline. Remember, there was this agreement with the corporate Democrats that, okay, we promise we're going to have a vote on this infrastructure bill on Monday, September 27th. Well, guess what? It is Monday, September 27th. However, it looks like they were going to kick the can down the road just a little bit. Let's throw Jake Sherman's tweet up on the screen here to sort of set the stage. Pelosi makes it official. She wants funding, infrastructure, and reconciliation all passed in this week. That reconciliation package, the $3.5 trillion or whatever it ends up being, they are nowhere close to having that thing ready for prime time this week. But that is what she is saying and what she's sticking to. We also had some sound from her talking about, all right, so progressives are saying they're not going to vote for the infrastructure package. That would mean they don't have the votes to pass it. Meanwhile, moderates are really, so-called moderates, are really trying to push this thing forward, saying, hey, we had a deal. We're supposed to vote on infrastructure this week. Pelosi says, okay, we're going to have these votes this week, but also I'm not going to bring a bill to the floor that doesn't have the votes. Let's take a listen to what she said.
The problem is you need 98 or 99% to pass the bills. And I know you said the infrastructure bill is going to pass, but the leader of the Progressive Caucus in the House, Gemma Priapal, is balking. She said on Friday that voting on this bill tomorrow is an arbitrary date, adding that more than 50 members will vote no if you first don't have agreement on the broader social investment bill. So are you confident these progressive members are going to vote yes, even though she says no?
Let me just say we're going to pass the bill this week. I promised that we would bring the bill to the floor. That was according to the language that those who wanted this to be brought to the floor tomorrow wrote into the rule. We will bring the bill to the floor tomorrow for consideration. But I'm never bringing a bill to the floor that doesn't have the votes. And I think any time you put an arbitrary date, well, remember when the Republicans said they were going to overturn the Affordable Care Act on the anniversary of the Affordable Care Act? I knew right then and then they were doomed. You cannot choose the date. You have to go when you have the votes in a reasonable time, and we will. And I do believe that we will do. First of all, let me just say it's an eventful week. First of all, we have to make sure, just chronologically, we have to make sure we keep government open, and we will. Second of all, we have to honor the vision of President Biden, and we thank him for his leadership and his courage putting forth such a bold package. In order to move forward, we have to build consensus. It's not winners, losers. It's bring people together, and that's what we always do in the Democratic Party.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
So we're going to consider it this week, but also we're not going to bring it to the floor without the votes, and they do not have the votes as of now. A couple more elements to throw in here, and then I'll get your reaction, Sauger. So we have the latest from Jake Sherman is that she is planning a Thursday vote on the infrastructure package. Let's put that tweet up on the screen. That was announced yesterday evening, relatively late. Before that happened, actually, the corporatists were already sort of getting a little bit loose on, okay, well, we'll get to it sometime this week. So they were backing off of that Monday date. We've got a Ryan Grimm tweet we can show you on that one. And then, so the last piece that I'll say is that 22 progressives, this is another Ryan Grimm tweet. Yeah, so that's Gottheimer bailing on the Monday vote. Go ahead and put the next one up there, Eric, Ryan's tweet. 22 progressives right now are saying no on infrastructure without reconciliation to kill that bill. That means Pelosi, even if she may have the votes, unless reconciliation comes up as well. And Sauger, this morning I'm reading that Pramila Jayapal says, actually, that number is growing. She says she's got 60 votes to say no to the infrastructure package without reconciliation. I think the fact that you had the backup from 11 senators and this is becoming a mainstream position. So actually, I know this is going to be really weird to hear, but so far, progressives are, at least in this little skirmish, they are winning the battle. Pelosi having to push the vote back, Gottheimer and the corporatists getting squishy on all of this. They actually have the upper hand right now.
But it's still, I'm just not sure that it'll all come to pass. Because what did you notice? She goes, well, the Republicans said we're going to vote by this. And then immediately after, then she goes out and says, okay, we're going to vote on Thursday, even though, look, there are not enough public votes. Maybe she knows something that we don't. I was just reading, though, in Politico this morning that a lot of people are very pissed at the president because the president apparently has not even gotten in touch with a lot of the whip count. He hasn't been calling. He hasn't really hasn't been anywhere. Nobody knows where the hell he is. So you put all of that together.
Whole agenda. This is it.
Is literally his whole agenda. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that if all of the votes go the wrong way, his entire presidency, I wouldn't say it's over, but in terms of passing any more large legislation, this is it. Bipartisan infrastructure bill plus the reconciliation bill was supposed to be his long-lasting legacy. That's how he sees himself 100%. Not being able to have that and all of this mess in the House is a big problem for him. And right now, as of right now, there are not the votes, especially because we know that, Kirsten Sinema had gone out and she's apparently been privately telling people that she will not raise, does not want to agree to any of the taxes that are being proposed.
She won't accept any corporate or income tax rate increases.
Let's go and put that Jonathan tweet up there on the screen. So he says, this is according to the New York Times, Ms. Sinema has privately told colleagues she will not accept any corporate or income tax rate increases. So that is an extraordinary piece of news because what does it mean? The entire Biden piece says that the reconciliation bill itself will all be paid for with tax increases. But now, Ms. Sinema says she will not accept any tax increase whatsoever. So if that's the truth, then basically the ball game is over. Now, she hasn't publicly communicated any of that. But remember, she had already laid her little deadline saying if there's not a vote by the end of September, then I'm not voting for the reconciliation bill. That, probably is still a little bit squishy. But if that's what privately her and Manchin are being communicated, then there's going to be a problem. And actually, Crystal, there's been some reports too. Sinema and Manchin are actually now whipping, or not Sinema and Manchin, but like that whole world. They are trying to get House Republicans to vote for that bipartisan infrastructure bill to try and overcome any sort of progressive. Because if they can just get it passed, then they'll just go, Manchin has already said, I don't want reconciliation in 2022. Sinema is 100% behind that. Many Gottheimer and all these other people, they don't want to vote for that other bill. Yeah. So if they could get it passed without progressive support, which does seem extraordinarily unlikely, I don't want to give anybody the wrong idea. What we're saying is the political incentives here on both sides are not good for Joe Biden, and he's nowhere to be seen. Nobody knows where the hell he is.
It is astonishing. Yeah. And again, not consistent with the way that he operated when he was vice president.
No, not at all.
He was the hand-on guy. He was the glad handle. He was the backroom deals guy that Obama, he didn't want to get his hands dirty with all of that. And frankly, he was a junior senator. He didn't have much of a relationship with most members of the Senate, let alone the House. So Biden was always the go-to guy to sort of strong-arm people and glad handle them, and hey, you're my buddy, you're my friend. And that's part of why Bernie had trouble attacking him, is because he had this good relationship with him, and like had all these warm fuzzies towards him that he didn't have towards Hillary Clinton. He hasn't been doing a lot of that. Yes, there were meetings at the White House, but he certainly is not asserting himself in this process. One sign, I think, of the frustration from the progressives and the sort of Bernie Sanders camp, because this is Biden's legacy. In a sense, it's also Bernie's legacy, because he really put this bill together. He put a lot of his sort of progressive cred on the line to advocate forcefully for it, to do the backroom wheeling and dealing that's not really his thing. He's not super comfortable in that role. One of his chief aides, Warren Gunnels, says, he tweeted this out, 62% support the $3.5 trillion American Families Bill to tax the 1%, lower drug prices, and combat climate change. 48 Democratic senators support it, while 2 corporate-sponsored Democrats don't. This is what a corrupt political system looks like. So pretty harsh words coming there from the Sanders camp. And it's hard to see exactly how this ultimately resolves. You know, it's very telling that Sinema, Manchin, Gottheimer, that whole crew, they never come out and actually oppose the provisions of the bill. They never say, you know what, I don't think we should have universal pre-K. You know what, I don't think that we should be doing anything about climate change. I don't think we should have free community college, because frankly, all of those individual pieces, very, very popular. The overall package, and the White House was distributing all these polls showing very, very popular. Okay, the Build Back Better agenda, which is like the worst tagline of all time, something only Democrats could possibly come up with. But anyway, it's really popular. Even something like a quarter of Republicans support this thing. So you'll notice they never actually come out and say, you know what, guys, I don't think that we should invest in our people. I don't think that this provision or that provision, the child tax credit, whatever it is I don't think that's I think that's a bad idea. They never actually come out and say that. Instead, they play all of these games. They leak to the Times like, oh, I've got this issue, or I've got that issue, or, you know, let's just press pause. I want to get to, I'm really committed to it, but let's just do it down the road. Or they talk about the overall spending number rather than the specifics, because the specifics here are really, really popular. Kyrsten Sinema is not playing to her base in Arizona or the general population in Arizona. As I laid out in detail, tax hikes on the wealthy, taxing the rich and taxing corporations, really, really, really popular. Okay, this is not about her playing to her state. It's not about Manchin playing to his state. For Sinema, you have to say, she must be looking at what comes after the Senate. She must be looking at what her job prospects may be down the road.
Fundraising. I mean,
fundraising,
running again.
Absolutely. All those are the incentives that she's responding to. Sirota had a great piece of reporting over at the Daily Poster showing that, right around the time that she announced she's not comfortable with the Medicare prescription drug reforms, she's getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in ads backing her up in her state from pharma. So it's just complete corruption. That's the big obstacle that they're facing now to getting anything passed. And just to sum up here, where they stand right now, it's very uncertain. Pelosi says they're going to vote for infrastructure on Thursday. She's also indicating, hey, we're going to do reconciliation this week. That seems impossible. And I do not think, there is no way that Nancy Pelosi brings an infrastructure bill to the floor that does not have the votes to pass it. And last thing I'll say is, remember, the reason that we have this whole arbitrary deadline this week and all of that was because of these Gottheimer and these obnoxious moderates. Well, in the agreement that she crafted, and we talked about this at the time, she gave herself all sorts of outs. So number one, as we're finding out right now, it didn't say you have to vote on Monday. It says you have to consider the bill on Monday. Now that can lead to all sorts of stalling tactics and all of that. So that's number one. And number two, there's just a provision in there that's just straight up like, and if the Speaker wants to pull it, she can. So she doesn't have any sort of firm, she has to do it Thursday. And again, I think it is extraordinarily unlikely, if not completely impossible, that Nancy Pelosi, knowing what we know about her, would bring this bill to the floor if it does not have the votes to pass. And today, the progressives are not only holding strong, they are growing in numbers.
Right. So you put all that together, it's a bad week for the Biden presidency. Pelosi's in a real pickle. I mean, so is Chuck Schumer. I just don't see how they can resolve it. I think it's
don't
too irreconcilable. The entire thing is going to go down in flames. And in 2 weeks, we're probably going to have the finality of it. The only thing that'll probably pass is a continuing resolution, maybe the debt ceiling. When I say continuing resolution, I mean there won't be a shutdown per se because of the funding, but then also, if you hit the debt limit, then the government also has to shut down. So it's going to be a fun couple of weeks here in Washington. We're bringing you guys inside all of the machinations because this stuff really matters. This is how they work the system. If you delay, we both knew the moment that Biden didn't move aggressively forward after that, the CARES Act, it was over. I was like, the American Rescue Plan, I think. The moment that happened, it was done because you let it get into the gridlock machine and the months of negotiations and back and forth. And then at the same time, you as the president of the White House, you don't take an active hand in shaping that bill. You're dead. I don't know how many presidents have to learn this lesson. Obama, he literally was the vice president the last time that this all played out. So I guess he doesn't remember.
He got so caught up in this idea of having some bipartisan win. And I do think that this comes back to, my theory of the Biden presidency is he has this sort of chip on his shoulder, wants to outdo Obama, wants to do the things Obama didn't do. So with the relief bill,
I thought he would.
That worked out pretty well because he saw, okay, Obama's stimulus is too small. I'm going to go bigger. So he does that. But the other thing that, he wants to outdo Obama on is Obama was never able to get Republicans to vote with him on a single thing. So he wants to show like, oh, I can do the bipartisanship thing. I don't know if you recall when people were pressing him on like, how are you going to get these Republicans to go along with you? He said, just watch me, watch me. So he was really committed for, no good reason to this idea of like, Lindsey Graham's going to vote with me on something. Taking the time to negotiate with them and come up with some package that they could possibly vote for, splitting the infrastructure piece from the rest of it, all of that has completely hamstrung his agenda. And so it's not an accident that they ended up in this place of complete, gridlock. Look, maybe they find their way out of it. I've certainly seen instances before where I'm looking at the chessboard and say, I don't know how this gets resolved, whether it was a debt ceiling or shutdown or whatever, and somehow they find a way. So you never know, that could ultimately happen. But Joe Biden's specific tactical decisions got us to this place where his own agenda is in danger of complete and utter collapse. So, they've sort of made their bed, and we'll see what happens this week. But we'll be watching it really closely because, as you said, I don't want you guys to get lost in the process here. The bottom line is there is a lot at stake in terms of just the day-to-day reality for working families, working people, and that's why we have our eyes so closely on it.
There we go.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.
We, the people. That is, of course, how the Constitution of the longest-standing democratic republic in the world begins. But in the turmoil of the last few years in the United States, author Tom Nichols argues in his new book that the people are currently part of the problem. The book is called Our Own Worst Enemy, The Assault from Within on Modern Democracy. He's a columnist for USA Today, a professor at the U.S. Naval War College, and Tom Nichols joins us now from Middletown, Rhode Island, for more. Tom, it's good to have you on the program again. How are you doing?
Good, Steve. Good to see you again.
Pleasure to have you on. Now, we had you on in 2017 to discuss your last book, The Death of Expertise, about the growing distrust of experts in too many parts of your country. Did writing that book inevitably lead to this one?
I wouldn't say inevitably, but it was sort of haunting me in the background because the problem that I talk about in this book is to some extent the same problem that was sort of lurking underneath the book about knowledge and experts and why people won't listen to them. And in fact, I even mentioned in the previous book that I thought perhaps a pandemic might snap people out of it, and it didn't. And that problem is narcissism, that we have become an affluent, we in the developed world, in the United States especially, but in other countries as well, We've become an affluent, narcissistic, self-centered society, and you can't sustain a democracy on narcissism and self-centeredness.
Before we dive into that thesis more, I did want to ask you about the tone of this book compared to the last one. It seemed to me in the last book that your tone was more one of, well, more that you were saddened. You were saddened about the fact that America, so much of America doesn't appreciate the value of expertise. But in this book, you seem, if I may say, Tom, you seem downright angry and are much more furious about America's descent into stupidity, or a lot of it's anyway. Have I got that right?
Angry, and it's also, there's a certain amount of, I think, pain in the book because it's autobiographical in places. I talk about my own upbringing and growing up in a factory town in Massachusetts. And it's a combination of anger and frustration and exasperation and a painful realization that this democracy that has lasted over 2 centuries is being endangered not by foreign enemies, not by a Great Depression, not by a cataclysm or a natural disaster, but simply by stubbornness and childishness and a kind of resentful sense that, no one is the boss of you, which then bleeds into really, uncivic and at times dangerous behavior.
You do lay much of the blame for the rise of illiberalism and this distrust of elites at the feet of the people themselves. What is the likelihood, don't take this the wrong way, Tom, but what is the likelihood that you, a university professor and author, are the right messenger to send this message to that group of folks?
I wrestled with this in the book because I'm a university professor now, but I grew up in a very working class, gritty neighborhood. My parents were not educated people. They were high school dropouts. We had, as I point out in the book, we suffered through a lot of the dysfunctions that afflict working class families back in the 1960s and 70s, including financial trouble and alcoholism and violence and all the things that happen to normal families in bad times. And in fact, at one point, I wondered, have I been part of the problem at both ends of my life? Was I part of the problem coming up as a young man in those days? I mean, I was as likely as a young teenager to go to jail as I was to go to college. And then later in my life. So I hope I'm the right messenger because I've lived it, I've made that transition from one group to another, from one class to another. And I hope that I have a little bit of distance on it, but I don't know that anyone's the right messenger for it because it's very hard to turn to your fellow citizens and say, maybe you're the problem. Maybe it isn't globalization. Maybe it isn't Jeff Bezos. Maybe it isn't the Chinese. Maybe the problem with our democracy is right here in front of us in the mirror. And that's never a pleasant thing to have to say to anybody.
Let's do an excerpt from the book. This is from Our Own Worst Enemy by Tom Nichols. Authoritarian systems are the authors of their own troubles and deserve every molecule of the opposition they face from within. But why are people who are already free and who are, by any relative measure materially and politically, better off than in those more repressive states, attacking their own systems of government? The answers are as disturbing as they are counterintuitive. We are losing because we won. We are suffering because we are successful. We are unhappy because we have what we want. Now, obviously, that is not the message that we've become accustomed to hearing over the last 5 years, particularly since Donald Trump arrived on the scene. What are you seeing that so many others apparently are not seeing?
One thing I did in the book was to try to take a longer view than just the last 5 years. Donald Trump is this kind of black hole that warps all of the light around it. And I think people on both the right and the left have a tendency to focus on Trump as some unique phenomenon. I tried to take a longer view of this over about 40 or 50 years and across countries. Remember, this attack on democracy is not unique to the United States. It's happening in Italy, it's happening in the UK, it's happening in Turkey, in Poland, in Hungary, in Brazil, in India. And I think that this is paradoxically because of peace and prosperity. Democracies can cope with almost any challenge except boredom. And in the book, I talk a bit about the prophetic voices that saw this coming. Christopher Lasch saw this coming when he talked about narcissism in 1979. But even further back, Eric Hoffer warned that in a book called The True Believer, that I think people need to start reading again as well, that when you have a middle class that's bored out of its mind, you are ripe for a mass movement, because people have this need to feel some sort of meaning in their life, and so they want to go and invent great crusades. Part of that is to convince people, and part of the reason, Steve, I think that when you say this is not the message we've had over the past 5 years, we've developed a political culture in a lot of countries that is constantly premised on telling the voters that things are the worst they've ever been. These are the worst times ever. No one has ever suffered like you. No one has ever seen the kind of deprivations you're living in. And of course, this is nonsense. This is just, in most times in history, it's been nonsense. But certainly in the early 21st century, it's nonsense on stilts. But, nobody runs for election by saying, everyone's doing well, but we could do better. My opponent is a good person, but I think I can do a better job. You don't motivate people that way, and you certainly don't motivate them through social media that way. And so we've created a culture that says you are a victim. The world has screwed you over. Everything is terrible, and someone is to blame. And if you elect me, I'll hurt those other people, and I'll get even on your behalf. And again, you cannot sustain a democracy on that kind of behavior. You just can't.
Well, it doesn't, let me suggest it doesn't have to be all of one or all of the other in order for there to be a grain of pushback against what you're talking about. For example, it's also what you just said is an empirically provable fact. The times in which we live, in many ways, have never been better for the most number of people. Having said that, globalization did shut down a lot of towns in Middle America, and there are drug problems as a result, and a lot of economic gains have been felt by the Jeff Bezoses of the world as opposed to more evenly felt across society. I mean, surely much of that is true, and much of that is a factor for the unrest in your country today, no?
There are two problems with that. First of all, as I point out in the book, having come from one of those towns, much of that deindustrial damage was actually done 30, 40, 50 years ago. And there's a point in the book where I'm talking to a friend from my hometown who points and he says, I remember when those factories were full. And I said, that's impossible. You can't possibly remember that, because when we were kids, those factories were already mostly empty. And so I talk a lot in the book about the lure of nostalgia. And so there's this assumption that, again, the data does not bear out, that somehow globalization in the past 10 years just emptied out all of these towns. The other problem with that thesis is the very poorest, at least in America, are not the people rebelling against democracy. As I say in the book, poverty, drug abuse, the undeniable impact of globalization, both good and bad, because I think the other problem is that we've decided globalization is just always bad, even though you and I are using it right now to have this discussion, we've come to somehow believe that all of this happened 10 minutes ago, but the people that are actually suffering from that are not the people that are attacking democracy. One of the things you find in the United States, as well as in Italy and the UK and other places, the most illiberal elements are middle-aged, middle-class people who are actually fairly well off. The people that attacked the US Capitol were not unemployed steelworkers. They were professional. They were accountants, dentists, real estate agents. Some of them chartered private flights to go there. This is what happens when you get a bored middle class that is fed a steady diet of propaganda about how they are the downtrodden and most aggrieved people in the world. It's such a great story to say that the democracy's in trouble because the very poorest are rising up into the streets. But that's not what's actually happening. It's not what's happening in most of these countries. These are political entrepreneurs goading the middle class into believing that somehow they've been victimized. Again, a story I tell in the book of, a good friend who high school diploma, kind of like me, he grew up in a financially, economically insecure town and on the edge of poor. And he literally is telling me about how much he thinks the world is unfair while he's sitting on his boat. That's the society we've created, where middle-aged men sitting on boats think that they are victimized somehow. And so while all of the issues you mentioned, Steve, they're real problems, but that's an argument for better policy, not for destroying democracy.
No, in fact, I do remember while watching the insurrection on your Capitol on the 6th of January earlier this year, I do remember thinking, boy, some of these folks are awfully well dressed. Well, they must have borrowed the clothes. Some of these folks have got awfully impressive wire cutters or equipment or building scaling
body armor,
devices.
camo.
Exactly, all of that stuff. And then when I read about all of that in your book, I thought, okay, maybe there's a little more to this story than meets the eye. So yeah, okay, I'm happy you put that on the record.
It's expensive to be an insurrectionist. It takes an outlay of some serious cash to do that.
As we saw it, yes, indeed. Let's talk about the chapter in your book that you devote to a study of a rural Italian community in the 1950s, and in helping understand what that was all about, may tell us a bit about today. Can you pick up that story for us?
Sure. Every student of politics, culture, anthropology, sociology, politics, this was a standard work that all of us had to read for years by an author named Edward Banfield. And Banfield was a New Dealer who got disillusioned with central planning and couldn't figure out why, despite all this government help, farms in the United States, farmers wouldn't cooperate with each other. And he goes to the University of Chicago and he kind of works on this as a problem. And then he goes to Italy. And that's when it occurs to him that the problem with development is not in the institutions or the laws or the policies that you can pass, but that you don't get very far with any of that if people simply won't cooperate with each other. And what he found in this Italian village was that development, he was mostly writing about poverty, not democracy, but it turned out to be a study of democracy, that if you only care about yourself and your immediate relatives, your children and yourself, that you actually end up poorer and worse off than if you were part of a community that volunteers, that you work together, you engage in honest commercial relations with each other, and so on. And I resurrected this book, not just because it's a classic in the genre, but because I want people to understand we are de-evolving as a democracy. We are literally moving backwards away from a very civic society, the kind that we know in North America, in the United States, and Canada, that Banfield, this professor, thought so highly of. We are actually going backward toward becoming like this Italian village in the 1950s. And I did that because as I was watching a lot of the events of the past 5 or 6 years, especially, people were saying things that were practically right out of this study in the 1950s, when people say things like, well, there was a school teacher in this Italian village who said, no one really respects anyone trying to get ahead. There's a great envy of education and wealth, and everyone distrusts anyone who's ever been elected to office, and on and on. So I put this in as a challenge to people in the democracies to say, if this sounds like you, think about that. Think about how, what that means.
Let me pick up on 2 words that you've used already today: narcissism and nostalgia. And to that end, you could argue that 4 decades of narcissism and nostalgia have us focused on Ronald Reagan, for example, who famously said, government is not the solution to your problem, government is the problem. And there was also Margaret Thatcher, his contemporary from the United Kingdom, who said there's no such thing as society. There's individual men and women, and there are families. People must look after themselves first. And let me emerge with this question. Is this distrust of government and a more sort of self-interested approach to citizenship, do you think we're at the inevitable endpoint of that worldview 4 decades later?
I don't think so. And I can't speak to the Thatcher quote, but I've always thought that the Reagan quote was out of context, because to understand, I was a voter in 1980, and to understand what Reagan said in 1980, you had to have lived through the 70s. and the notion that a lot of Americans had that government simply was getting in the way of better solutions to a lot of social problems. The Reagan administration thought government could do a lot of good things, just not most of the things that it was doing by 1980. I actually identify the 1970s and the early 1970s as the starting point of a lot of this kind of cultural rot. Remember, the 70s were famously dubbed the me decade. And that once we came out of a sort of permanent youth culture after the 60s and we monetized it, because this is, in a way, the book is a critique of capitalism as well. Once we consumerized everything, we were already on the path to ruin. I think, there's no arguing that the conservative movement definitely had an impact on the notion of, self-reliance and less involvement with government. But I still think that the original sin here is the permanent institutionalizing of a consumerist, youth-oriented culture that encouraged us to follow our every whim, to never get older, to never grow up, to never be responsible. And I think that really begins in the early 1970s. And then accelerates actually after the end of the Cold War, when we just lose any sense of seriousness about anything. I mean, in some ways, if I'm nostalgic, I'm almost nostalgic for the 1980s because it feels like we took things, including politics, a lot more seriously than we did after 1990.
Well, let me follow up with this delicious quote from your book. You say, "We can now get from hello to I hate you faster and at a greater distance than any generation of humans who have ever lived." How delighted are you with what social media have done to us?
That's a hard question to answer because I'm part of the problem. I'm a technological optimist. I came of age when the internet did. I'm kind of a computer nerd myself. But social media has been deeply destructive in the way that we as people have used it. Again, this is a problem that requires us to look in the mirror. And part of the problem with social media is that you are really mostly rewarded for negative interactions. And for a lot of people, social media has become the equivalent of coming home and kicking the dog. That you just reach out and lash out at other human beings because it just makes you feel better about your day. And you don't really have to think about the fact that you're hurting other people's feelings or saying terrible things to other human beings. And I've been guilty of it. I get snippy with people on social media. I have a large Twitter account. But I think this is where it does dovetail. Steve, you asked me at the beginning of our discussion about the death of expertise. It's also a source of alternative, I won't even say information, of alternative views of reality, like rabbit holes that people fall into and become completely irrational about. And so you have this 1-2 punch of an encouragement to be our very worst selves anonymously from behind a keyboard and be just horrible to other people, but also to live in worlds that aren't real and to believe in things that simply are not true. And at some point, if knowledge and virtue, as I quote the founders of the American Republic repeatedly, John Adams, James Madison, others pointed out, knowledge and virtue are the pillars of a representative democracy. And if we lose both of them, we lose everything.
We are in danger of losing those right now. I appreciate your deep concern about that. I also note, and you and I are about the same age here, we certainly never grew up with anything in government akin to a ministry of loneliness, which they have in the United Kingdom right now. There are just a lot of people out there who are feeling alone and atomized, and they don't see any particular way out of that as well. And I wonder, as you sort of add it all up, do you see a way out of all of this for us?
I hope that some of that will dissipate with the end of the pandemic. But of course, these uncivic attitudes that have especially arisen in the United States during the pandemic are keeping us locked in this kind of empty, lonely existence because we simply can't get past it. I think at this point today, we're over 700,000 deaths in the United States. But I think, again, people have to make choices. They need to step away from their computers. They need to turn off their televisions. Arthur Brooks at the American Enterprise Institute, a few now at the Atlantic, and a few other folks have said simple things like take a walk, go outside. And it seems like this really anodyne, condescending advice, but that is important. And I think one way to get past this, people have become obsessed with issues at the national level, particularly here in the United States, and pay almost no attention to anything happening at the local level. One cure for all of this is to know what's going on in your community. I was in a store here in Rhode Island the other day, and there were like 6 local newspapers from all the towns that surround me. And it was just it just warmed my heart, that if you really want to know what was going on in the communities along the Sakonnet River, they have a newspaper and you should read it. But instead, people want to go online and say, I'm going to solve, racial problems in the United States. I am going to solve the deficit. I'm going to solve, these gigantic problems of social unrest. And that is, again, a narcissistic sense of heroism that tells you that simply being an involved member of your community is beneath you or not enough for you somehow. And so I would appeal to people to say, get away from this constant rush of narcissistic gratification and do some of the boring things. I spent 2.5, almost 3 years working in state and local government, and I can tell you that's where everything gets done. But it's boring. It's not as much fun as working. I worked in the U.S. Senate. It's not as much fun as working in the Senate. But if you really want to figure out how the potholes get filled and how your garbage gets picked up, that's where it happens. And I think that's where people need to focus. And then the rest kind of solves itself over time.
Your story reminds me of the fact that Canada was engaged in trying to repatriate its constitution from the United Kingdom for about 120 years before we finally did it. And oh my God, you want to talk about an obsessive cottage industry for so many folks. It got to the point where somebody once said, I believe in the open window theory of constitutional reinvigoration and everything. What does that mean? Guy said it means opening up the window and looking out it, and that's it. And that's not a bad thing to remember from time to time. Opening up the window, looking out it, seeing the beauty of the world, and giving everything else a rest for a while. I'd like to give the last word to your dad on this, who gave quite a brilliant answer, as you've described it in the book, when you asked him whether he was voting for Barack Obama or Mitt Romney. What was his answer?
Well, I have to set the stage by telling you that my father, an intelligent and well-informed but uneducated man born in the early 20th century, my dad had a lot of pretty retrograde political views. I mean, he was a bigot. He was a misogynist. He was, your typical white working class, blue collar to gray collar worker. And he was one of the Democrats. He was an FDR Democrat who left the Democratic Party here in America after 1968, and then became a Nixon voter and a Reagan voter and so on. And yet, at the end of his life, he was in his 90s, and we were watching President Obama speak. And no matter what my father's views about race or anything else, he never spoke ill. He was old school. You didn't speak ill of the President of the United States. You just didn't. It was something you didn't do. And I said, I knew my father, was Republican, he was voting for Romney, and we were from Massachusetts. And I said, Dad,